What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, division rivals? This is Steven Hyder with Gate City Sports Channel, the sports channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is you get around to watching us. Once again, guys, Steven Hyder, Gate City Sports Channel. All right, y'all, today's topic. As promised, guys, I want to break down and I want to talk about Marquise Goodwin, okay? This is one of those guys that had been rumored to, be coming to Philadelphia for weeks before the draft, right? I mean, 2-3 weeks, I think, even outside of the draft, we started to hear rumblings that the Eagles were interested in trading for Marquise Goodwin. And a lot of us, we weren't surprised to hear that because Marquise Goodwin, for everything that someone like me could point out and say about him, the one thing you can't take away from this young man is he's one of the more athletic players in the league. This kid is super fast. He's super athletic, and he fits the mold of what the Eagles at the time really needed more than anything, right? Speed, insurance policies, things like that. Well, guys, today I'm going to take you through an in-depth look at Marquise Goodwin and the fit here in Philadelphia. There's some of us here who are in the middle. We think that this kid, if healthy, if active, and if he can beat out some of these younger kids, could be a vital piece to the Eagles' offense. But we're not ready to just jump on that train yet, guys. And there are other you guys who think, huge signing, it's going to be a big player, huge deal. And then there are the other side of these things, guys, where we got people who are like, this is crap. He's not going to do anything. I tend to fall in the middle. But without further ado, guys, let's jump into today's topic. Last season, it's no secret that the Eagles were greatly affected by Deshaun Jackson's injury. When Deshaun went down, our ability to vertically stretch the field went away with him. It was one of the most disappointing, losses that I've experienced as an Eagles fan in terms of player ability and what he could have done for the offense. And it was 2 years in a row it happened to us, right? Mike Wallace in 2018, 2019, Deshaun Jackson. But this particular year, in 2019, it seems like the effects really compounded and made it worse. When Deshaun went down, listen, the Eagles were forced to turn to guys like Nelson Agholor.
Coverage out here on the outside, and as the tight end goes up the field to safety and that quarters coverage stays there.
Right? Matt Collins and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
Pump fake. Wentz lets it fly down the field, and it's...
We asked these guys to increase their role. You heard Howie say about Nelson Agholor. When we look at speed, they look at more than just your 40 time. They take GPS readings to see what players are hitting top speeds, okay? Nelson Agholor, according to Howie Roseman, was a top 10 speed guy in the league.
And the GPS numbers, Nelson Agholor is one of the top 10 fastest receivers in the league, and so
They felt they had an insurance policy in Nelson Agholor. Then, Matt Collins, a guy, if you went and you looked at his college film and you studied that 40 time, you wouldn't be impressed. But all of us who know Matt Collins, we know that Matt Collins was faster than his 40 time. He was banged up and injured when he ran it. The kid's slightly faster than that 40 time would indicate to you. With that said, the kid just was not a very good route runner and appeared to have, half interest in playing the position of wide receiver. He liked playing special teams. We all know that came out. He said that he enjoys it. He didn't seem to put the same level of effort into actually crafting, his game around route running and gaining separation. And then we had the young guy, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, our second-round pick, who was asked to do much in 2019 as a rookie. He was asked to learn all three positions, got thrown into the lineup very early, and just never seemed to get his footing under him as a player. Needless to say, none of these guys proved to be effective in their roles, yet alone did any of them come anywhere close to being able to replace the things that Deshaun Jackson could do for this offense.
Given it's remarkable, all the people, all the bodies, all the arms that were around Wentz, throwing it off his back.
We all know the story got worse, guys. Things got worse for Philadelphia. We ended up losing towards the end of the season Alshon Jeffrey. Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz, Jordan Howard, Brandon Brooks, and Lane Johnson. If you go look at that playoff game against Seattle, not only did we lose all those guys, but let's be real. Even Carson Wentz was knocked out of that football game with a concussion by what I will call a suspect hit, okay? I don't think the intent was there to try to end a career or anything like that, but I do think the player knew what he was doing was outside the bounds of what you should do and still went for it.
One play into the second Eagles drive, Carson Wentz was concussed.
Following that disappointing loss, in comes Howie Roseman to give us the end-of-season press conference.
When you bring in guys that are injured, it obviously increases the risk that they'll get hurt again.
Despite all of this, listen, the Philadelphia Eagles still went on to win the NFC East. And they were very competitive in a playoff game while it was at home. But nonetheless, given the amount of injuries to that offense and your leader, Carson Wentz, going down, we should have been beaten handily in that game. And yet we remained competitive.
Scott in there was there.
Scott flares to his left. McCown, he's going to get taken.
The bottom line was Carson Wentz led all quarterbacks in total snaps in 2019. And the Philadelphia Eagles overall were second in time of possession. But that also lied the problem to an extent. The Eagles had to evolve into a methodical time of possession, grueling up and down 3 or 4 yard strike offense in order to win these football games. And it became very obvious this team needed an explosive element. In steps today's conversation. Let's talk about Marquise Goodwin in the totality of this conversation.
Fake it to Breida. And that'll be a first down.
Is Marquise Goodwin athletic enough to bring back an explosive element to this Philadelphia Eagles offense? The answer is a resounding yes. Of course he is. This kid put up a 4.27 40 at the 2013 NFL Combine. He blew out the next closest guy running in that combine, which happens to be Dallas Cowboys receiver Tavon Austin in his 4.33 or something like that, 4.35. I mean, the kid's a burner. He absolutely has the foot speed to increase your team speed.
One way, roll the other. Garoppolo
Touchdown.
looking down the field and wide open, and that will be a touchdown for Marquise Goodwin.
All right. As we talk about adding explosive elements to our offense, what that really boils down to is two things. Number one, can a guy create separation from the cornerback? And then number two, how good is this individual at tracking a football once he gains said separation? Now, we all know speed is a big element in creating separation, but it's probably not the most important element of creating that separation, nor is it necessary to have that exact skill set per se. You have to have some element of speed, but you don't need to be a 4.2 or a low 4.3 guy to create separation. It really comes from your ability to run routes. One good way of always telling this, guys, is to go look at the advanced analytics and see what a guy is getting in terms of the coverage against him. When you look at a guy like Marquise Goodwin and you take a look at his advanced analytics, he's getting an average cushion, the distance that a cornerback plays off of him, of 5.8 yards.
Let's take over back end of this.
He gains an average of 3 yards of separation from that 5.8 yard cushion, and he has a targeted air yard distance of 14.2 yards.
Third quarter, and Hoyer looking up top. He's going to try to take a shot for Goodwin.
If we compare his numbers to similar type players, look at Tyreek Hill, guys. Tyreek Hill gains an average of a 5.9 cushion, or his length, a cushion from corners of 5.9 yards. He gains a separation of 3.1 yards, and he has a targeted air yard, ratio of 14.8 yards. Targeted air yards, guys, is where the ball is, like how far the ball is to travel. It's basically subtracting yak, yards after the catch, okay, to see how far downfield you're being targeted. Another player who would be similar, guys, take John Brown, who had a cushion, cornerbacks gave him a cushion of 5.7 yards. He gained separation of 2.3 yards, and his targeted air yards were 16.3 yards. So Marquise Goodwin falls right in the middle of Tyreek Hill and John Brown in terms of the cushion, right? The separation and the distance down. Well, he's the shortest one in terms of the targeted air yards. Now, guys, one thing to keep in mind here when you look at things like targeted air yards, cushion, and separation, your cushion will correlate to the separation. If, generally speaking, if you have more cushion, if you're going underneath, you'll gain a lot of separation. However, if you're more of a vertical stretch guy, you're probably going to expect with more cushion, you'll have less separation, but a larger targeted air yard rate. So you got to look into those things. Two other players to give you in comparison, guys, would be Marquise Hollywood Brown, which I don't know if you guys call it that, but they confused John Brown because those stats I was giving you, that was 2018 with John Brown and Tyreek Hill, because those are the adequate, that's the only years I could get these kind of numbers on Marquise Goodwin because of playing time. But Marquise Hollywood Brown this past year had a cushion afforded to him of 5.8 yards by corners, had a separation of 2.9 yards, and a targeted air yards of 14.9. And then you look at a guy like John Ross. John Ross was afforded a cushion of 6.4 yards by corners. He had a separation of 3 yards and a targeted air yards of 10.9. He worked underneath quite a bit, obviously. But those would be your adequate comparisons. But now let's look at some more analytics, and let's get into some of the things I get a little more concerned about with Marquise Goodwin.
Garoppolo gets away from the pressure and incomplete.
All right, ladies and gents. One of the largest concerns with Marquise Goodwin, is going to be his ability to make contested catches and his drop rate. There's no way around it. I like this young man, but I'm telling you right now, he doesn't have the greatest hands. So let's just take a look at his catch percentage. If you go and you take a look at this young man's catch percentage from the 28 season, okay? Because that's where we have the most adequate data to judge him by the amount of routes and things like that he ran. His catch percentage was 52.27%. So just over 50% of passes that he caught. Now let's compare that to similar players. He is nowhere near as bad as guys like John Ross, who was 36.21% catch rate, or John Brown, who was 43.3% catch rate. But at the same time, he wasn't quite to the level of Deshaun Jackson at 55.41%. He was nowhere near as good as Tyreek Hill, 63.5%. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Browns, 64.79%. Or Taylor Gabriel. This is a surprising one from, if we're going to go back to 2018 and look, and mind you guys, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Browns are all from 2019 because that's the year that he played. Taylor Gabriel in 2018 had a 72% catch rate. It's phenomenal. I know this, guys. I'm a guy who studies film. I know catch rate doesn't always entail how many times a guy's dropping the ball, because you can have uncatchable passes.
1st and 5, a luxury down and distance for Garoppolo as he goes to the top side. But through
So let's take a look at the drop rate, and that'll give you a better idea. Unfortunately, guys, when we take a look at Marquise Goodwin, guys, in 2018, his drop rate was 7%. That's ridiculous, guys. 2019, man, he was bordering in some dangerous territory. 9.5% drop rate. That's really, really bad, guys. That is not anywhere near where you want to be. And let's compare them. Simply put, if you go and you take a look at a guy like John Ross, you got a guy who's, statistically really and analytically really bad. 12.1%. But the problem is the rest of these guys, they're nowhere near as bad. Taylor Gabriel, nowhere near that number, guys. You look at a guy like John Brown. John Brown, 4.3% drop rate. Deshaun Jackson, 2.7% drop rate. Then you look at a guy like Marquise Brown, 2.8%. Hollywood Brown, 2.8% drop rate. Tyreek Hill, 4.4% drop rate. The only person who is statistically and analytically worse than him in terms of the catch radius and his ability to catch passes, guys, is John Ross from the Cincinnati Bengals. It's not good company to keep, guys. Now, to be fair, is he as bad as someone like tracking the ball and his ability to track the ball? Is he as bad as a guy like Nelson Agholor? No. I think he's better than Nelson Agholor. But I want to point something out about Agholor before we just crap all over Agholor. Even Nelson Agholor in 2018 only had a 3.1% drop rate. And in 2019, the season of most statistical concern to us, his drop rate was only like 5.8%. It was nowhere near the numbers that we were seeing coming out of Marquise Goodwin. So his drops really, really concern me, guys. His hands in general concern me.
Garoppolo 12 of 19 in this half. Oh my goodness!
Blake Countess. Look, man, you got some connection back here to Philly. I got to tell you, that was a dirty-ass hit. By far, the largest concern I have about Marquise Goodwin is his health. Guys, simply put, he hasn't stayed healthy. And for a team that had an end-of-season press conference where the theme was, we really, really need to stay healthy. We really, really need to be careful about who we bring in here. And part of the reason why we're having so many injuries is the fact that we're bringing in people with prior injuries, so it makes us more susceptible to having those critical injuries down the stretch. I'm concerned about this young man's health. 2019, guys, he missed 8 games because of a lower leg injuries. Okay? 2018, he missed games due to lower leg issues early on in the season. So he didn't really, I don't know if he missed games per se in 2018 for that one, but he certainly suffered some injuries. He missed some snaps. 2017, okay, he suffered 2 separate concussions. One in December, one in October. 2016, this young man suffered 3 concussions. One in preseason in August, one in September, and then one in October. Okay? 2015, he ended up having chest and rib fractures, both in August in the preseason, and then in October in the regular season, which landed him on injured reserve. And in 2014, the young man also had a concussion. So, from 2014 to 2017, this young man suffered 6 concussions. That's a pretty serious deal, guys. Even though the past 2 seasons it hasn't reared its ugly head, suffering that many concussions, even if they're grade 1, is concerning. The chest and rib fractures, right? The lower leg injuries. This young man has missed a lot of time during the course of his career. That concerns me because when a young man's on the field, yeah, we have some issues with his hands at times. But I think he gives you enough explosive plays to say, like, okay, yeah, he's going to miss some and make you mad, but he's also going to make some crazy athletic plays that are also have you rooting for him. The problem with this is that the best ability, we all know, is availability. And I'm not too sure how much we can trust this young kid when it comes to his availability.
Decisions, but going forward, we need to infuse youth in this team. We have 10 draft picks. We think we're going to have 10 draft picks.
The last point I want to stress here about this young man is competition. If you picked a team that had similar wide receiver issues to the Eagles, it was the San Francisco 49ers. And just like the Eagles, and probably more so than the Eagles, the 49ers have really invested in their wide receiver core over the past few years. Beginning back in 2018, they drafted Dante Pettis in the 2nd round. Okay? 2018, they also spent a 7th round pick on Richie James Jr., a very similar receiver to Marquise Goodwin. In 2019, they spent a 2nd round pick on Deebo Samuels, guys. In this past draft, you got guys like Jalen Hurd, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings coming in. They've been investing heavily, guys. They got a veteran they brought in, Travis Benjamin, okay? Then you look at undrafted rookie free agents like Kendrick Bourne, who's played big roles for them. You look at the Eagles roster, and I don't see what's changed for him in terms of the competition, guys. Maybe not as many young guys, but you got Djax, you got Alshon, you got JJ, who was a 2nd round pick in 2018. Rager, who was a 1st round pick here this draft. You got undrafted rookie free agent and Greg Ward Jr., who's played pivotal moments for the Eagles. You got John Hightower as a 5th-round pick. Watkins a 6th-round pick. And then Marquise Goodwin himself is the veteran coming in to compete. I'm a little cautious to get overly confident in this young man because the situation is pretty similar to what happened in San Francisco, and they were willing to let this man go for nothing more than a swap of 6th-round picks, guys. This guy we didn't invest a lot to go get him, guys. We literally changed positions in the 6th round. That's what happened. And even after changing positions in the 6th round, we still decided to draft Quez Watkins. So, optimistically cautious here would be what I would say. I think this young man can stay healthy. Look, I have some other concerns about this young man. I don't think he has the most complete route tree. He runs a lot of like drag routes and stuff like that, guys. He'll run some seam routes. He's very vertical in his stem, and he doesn't do a lot of the, routes you'll see like in routes, breaking in routes. You don't see him running a lot of slant routes. You don't see a full route tree from this young man. But the little bit that he does run, he can be very explosive, and that is important. All right, guys, these are my thoughts on this young man. I know this was a long video. I appreciate y'all hanging in there. I wanted to give this its just due here, and I feel like I did that for you guys. All right, y'all, let me know what you think about this young man. Let me know what you think about his probability is to make the roster because we still got to put pads on. At the end of the day, he still has a shot because the other guys fighting on this roster are very much unproven and young guys. So he will have a shot. There's no doubt about that part. All right, y'all, let me know your thoughts. You know how we end these videos. We go E-A-G-L-E-S. All right, y'all, let's go Eagles.